Back in the 90s, your novel Internet Spy was turned into a TV film, and quite a lot of authors, that's a dream for them. So I wondered how it felt to you to actually see your work represented on the screen, and also how true to your work you think they stayed.
Well, the weird thing about that is it was done by a South African TV company.
Yeah.
And so I had very little to do with it other than giving them permission to do it.
Yeah.
And when it was done, they sent me a videotape, or rather a DVD of the finished product, and I've never played it.
Oh, fair enough. So you've not actually seen it?
Yeah, it's in a cupboard somewhere. I don't know why. I just don't want to look at it. I couldn't tell you why.
Well, I suppose it's a big risk, isn't it, for you to actually watch it as well, because you could be really happy with it, but also equally you might not be so.
That could be the reason. But I've never been inclined to do it. I've told a few people that in the past, and they think I'm a bit mad to be saying that, but really it kind of doesn't hold a lot of interest for me, really, because it's something that was done a long time ago, as far as I'm concerned, that project is gone. It's a long time ago, so it was nice that they did it, but I don't think I'd really want to watch it.
And it's interesting you say that. So how much of that is kind of your actual approach to writing as well? Do you ever look back at what you've done, or do you write a book, finish it, and then immediately sort of start thinking about the next one?
I'd probably say that apart from just occasionally dipping into something that I've done in the past for a couple of minutes, I've never actually read anything I've done once it's finished. I wouldn't want to go. I'd probably be too embarrassed about it, to be honest. I'd probably be looking at it and thinking, this is really terrible. But
I suppose you'd always want to keep doing redrafts as well, and you never actually finish it if you kept doing that.
Well, it is actually a bit of a problem because I mean the thing that I've just finished and is out now. I mean, I keep looking at it and thinking I wish I hadn't have done that, and think in fact what I've done is I've sort of treated it as a bit of computer software.
Yeah.
And I've given it a version history, just like a computer software, so that when I want to go in and change it, I can. And I've sort of labelled it version 1.01, which I think is quite a sort of nice thing to do, really.
Fair enough, though. That will make sense. You obviously initially approached me actually to look at reviewing Johnny Nothing, and I wondered if you could tell us a bit more about the book, and also how you're looking at promoting it. I know you mentioned it's ebook only for now. What does success look like to you?
The thing is, I sort of fell ill, and I took a long time off. I took about 18 years without really writing, and kind of, which is a long story. And prior to that, I had the agents and I had the publishers and all that kind of thing. And so I kind of about 18 months ago, I was well enough to start writing again, and kind of I went back to the agents, and I got offered a kind of derisory advance that was sort of a lot less than I'd been offered in years gone by. And in the past, I don't know. You're a writer, aren't you, as well?
Yes, yeah.
The thing about publishers is that if you have a publisher and an agent, I did a lot of maths, and basically what they do is they take about 85% of everything you own. You own, and I just thought, well, the advance is so derisory that I might as well do it. I have a friend who lives around the corner who did the same thing, and she got to number one on Amazon actually, and made an absolute shed load of money. So I just thought I'd better go ahead and do that. So the question was, how am I promoting it?
Yeah.
At the moment, by giving it to every single person that I can think of, and I'm doing the job now of a marketeer.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think I'm doing a better job actually than the ones that used to market my stuff in the past, because I've got radio interviews lined up. I'm in 2 or 3 newspapers. Reviews are starting to come in. So I actually think I've got a lot more coverage from this already within a month than I ever had with anything else. And I think that's probably to do with the fact that it's your own product and you're marketing your own product and you have a vested interest.
Yeah, right.
Whereby
be more passionate about it, and yeah, like you said, it makes a better story as well for people who you then approach as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the past, the marketing people that I met occasionally, it was usually sort of somebody sat in an office somewhere who was marketing 10, 15, 20 books, and they had a certain budget for each book, and I reckon they must have put a couple of days' work in, really, frankly.
Yeah, well, I mean,
And
most agencies work on a time-based rate, don't they? So
yeah, exactly. And I think it's also based upon the amount of advance that they're prepared to give you. So in my case, I think I was offered about 10 grand, which sounds like an awful lot of money, but it isn't really, because the way they treat you is that they give you a third up front, a third on receipt of the manuscript, a third upon publication. So what they're asking you really to do for 3 or 4 grand is to write a book, which may take a whole year. And at the end of that, they're going to give you 10 grand's worth of marketing, which is nothing.
Yeah, well, especially when you can do it yourself. So.
Well, precisely. I mean, it's not easy. I'm finding it quite difficult, but getting some kind of response, I must admit, which I'm quite. I mean, I'm finding that people are actually wanting to help, which I'm surprised. And like you, an example. For example, you know.
So, I mean, you mentioned as well. Obviously, you've had this long hiatus, and obviously in that time, there's been the sort of the mainstream rise of the internet, and obviously social media and launches of e-readers and that kind of thing. I mean, how much has that changed being an author and actually marketing your books as well?
I think it's absolutely, completely, and utterly different. It's a completely different ball game. I mean, the very fact that sitting in my room at home, I've got access to thousands of people all over the world. I mean, back in 1995, that would have just been impossible.
Yeah.
Even though the book that was a success for me was called Internet Spy.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't have believed it, really. I mean, it's just amazing, and it really is like having access to the whole world in your home.
Yeah.
Sounds a bit cliche, but it really is true.
And I noticed as well, you've been releasing chapters of a few projects on your blog. So there's Smack and the Game as well. I noticed both of those up there. What made you sort of decide to release sort of chapters online, and what's the feedback been like on that so far?
Well, I'll tell you what it is that I developed an illness called hypothyroidism back in about probably the late 80s, and didn't realise I had it. And it's a common sort of thing, but it went undiagnosed for a long time.
Yeah.
And one of the symptoms of this is the fact that you can't concentrate.
Okay.
And so they call it brain fog. And so basically, I became really good at starting projects and never finishing them. I'd have a kind of burst of activity, and I just couldn't get any further than sort of 3 or 4 chapters. And I put it down to the fact that I was suffering from a monumental case of writer's cramp.
Yeah.
When in fact it's actually a really common symptom for people that have that disease. So what I started doing, I got all these projects that I started, and some went as far as about 8,000 words actually, yeah. And then they were just left on a hard drive, and I've literally got probably 15, 20 years work sitting on a hard drive. Some are a couple of chapters, some are 20, 30 chapters, some are just a few lines, and I think that's another nice thing about keeping blogs and stuff. You can just put them. I mean, I would never consider approaching publishers with them, because I don't think they're good enough, really.
Yeah.
But I've had very good feedback. People like it, and it's better to put it on the net and let people read it than just sit it on a hard drive somewhere and gathering dust.
Yeah, I suppose it's almost giving it a new lease of life, I suppose, isn't it?
Well, it's getting reaction, and I wouldn't have got any reaction at all if it's sitting there on a hard drive. So yeah. I might as well make some use of the work that I've done, however bad or however sporadic.
Another thing I noticed, obviously, you seem like quite a creative person in general. Obviously, you've worked as an illustration, as a teacher in it, as well as an illustrator, from what I understand. I mean, where would you say you get your inspiration from? Do you just absorb it from anywhere and anything? Is there something in particular that inspires you to keep going, or?
Fear, I think. Like Oscar Wilde said, that fear is the greatest aphrodisiac. So I think it's fear of failure.
I think that's another common writer thing as well. So.
But I mean, another thing he said as well is that writers write to impress the ladies, and that might be the case as well.
Does it work for you?
Not literally, no. in fact, not at all, probably. But metaphorically, writers write to impress the ladies, or so he says.
Fair enough. No, that makes sense. And so, just obviously, as we're a book blog, be interesting to know what's the last book that you read, and what did you think about it?
What's the last book that I read? The last book that I read was probably The If Game by Catherine Storr. And the reason I read it is that I was reading it to my daughter as a bedtime story. Do you know Catherine Storr?
I don't know. I'll have to check it out.
It's really worth looking her up, actually, because she wrote a book called Marianne Dreams. Have you heard of that?
No.
It's
this
a really
is a book I read
fantastic...
from about 40 years ago, so...
Oh, no, this is about 46. This is
there we go. It's about the right time now.
And she, so it's a very, very, very good book. It was made into a movie called Paper House. It's an awful thing. It was also made into a UK TV series in the 70s, which you can still get actually. But very interesting. And the problem with her is what's interesting about her is it was a massive success. And on the strength of that, she wrote about 4 or 5 more. And then when she got to about 80, she was dropped by her publisher. She couldn't get a book deal, so she committed suicide.
Well, that's tragic.
Yeah, no, so it's worth checking out. She's really good. So the book was called The If Game, and it's a kind of time travel kind of thing. And myself and my daughter, we quite like that kind of thing.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad you both enjoyed that then. And what's next for you? So not just in 2014, but in beyond. Have you got a long-term plan for your writing, or are you just going to take it as it comes?
Well, I've started. There's a few. I mean, there's a chapter in Johnny Nothing in which one of the characters dies temporarily and goes off to meet God, and then comes back to life and finds that he wasn't really dead. And I kind of quite like the idea, and I've been playing with it. So the next thing I'm doing, which I've started, which is called Dan's Dead, in which the very first chapter starts off with the character dead, and so that's the only thing I can think about at the moment. So for the time being, I'm sticking to children's books.